Thank you, Bruno. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here to present on something my country does, and I'm happy that we have been chosen as one of the first countries to, under the series he's conducting, the Good Country Guide. We are humbled that Uganda, I'm humbled that Uganda has been chosen to share our experiences, especially concerning our refugee policy. What I'm going to do, I didn't want to prepare a PowerPoint because I want attention to be on me. Usually, when I'm listening to someone presenting PowerPoint, I end up reading the slides than paying attention. So I decided to do that, and so there will not be PowerPoint, but later on we can share the presentation through Mr. Bruno for those who are interested. So Uganda has been in the limelight in the past. People are talking about our good refugee policy. We recently hosted a Solidarity Summit in Uganda in June this year, hosted together with the United Nations. And during that time, the UN Secretary General commended Uganda for its policy, and the government and the people of Uganda for their humanity in welcoming and sheltering those fleeing from conflict and violence. People may wonder, why is Uganda doing this? Mr. Bruno asked me that question earlier, but as we go through the presentation, I'm going to explain why we do it. Last week, on 9th August, the Federal Minister for Foreign Affairs for Germany, Sigmar Gabriel, was also in Uganda, and he also commended us for what we do. And he said that although Germany has hosted many refugees, mainly from the Middle East, what Uganda was doing was, especially for the South Sudanese refugees, was very inspiring and should be supported by international community, because in the long run, if we are not supported, Uganda may not be able to sustain the refugee influx. So these are just two examples but if you check the media, and now the fact that even the Institute of Cultural Diplomacy is putting its silences on us, I'm happy, and so I'm happy to share with you our experience. Now, just for the record, who is a refugee? Because if we refer to the convention relating to the status of refugees, also known as the 1951 Refugee Convention, a refugee is a person owing to a well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group or political opinion, is outside the country of his nationality, and is unable, or owing to such fear, is unwilling to avail himself of the protection of that country, and or who, not having a nationality and being outside the country of his former habitual residence, as a result of such events, is unable, or owing to such fear, is unwilling to return to it. That is the definition of a refugee. It's an international document, convention. Uganda is a party to this. And the African Union, before, that is through the OAU, went further to build on the 1951 Refugee Convention and 1967 Protocol to expand the definition of who is a refugee. So the addition to the definition includes external aggression, occupation, foreign domination, or events seriously disturbing public order as a reason for someone's flight. Then also, it includes those fleeing environmental catastrophes such as drought and famine. Because it's not only that people are running because of political persecution, but you can also go, if there's drought and there's no food or whatever, you can leave and go to the next, wherever you can survive, because this is about life. Why should you stay in one place when you know you can move? And because where there's life, there's hope. You stay here, you will die. If you don't move on, you will die. So what you do is you move and see where you can find. So you can see that the OAU went on to expand the definition to cater for these extra categories. So whereas in the 1951 Refugee Convention, it uses country of his nationality as a geographical unit, the OAU, the 1969 Refugee Convention uses his place of habitual residence as geographical frame of reference. Now, I will come to the history of Uganda welcoming refugees. Most people think we have been welcoming refugees maybe since the 60s, but no, it goes back to the 30s, 1930 to 1944, during the Second World War. A number of refugees were sent to Uganda. We had about 7,000 refugees, including Europeans and Arabs, who were sent to Uganda, and they were camped in a place called Nabyeya and Kodja. The biggest number of this group were Polish, and most of them, up to now, people talk about them because they were Catholics, and some of them were Catholic priests, and they went up setting up churches, and people were impressed how a Polish, within a short time, could be able to learn and preach in our local languages. Then, but the biggest people, we also had Syrian interns from Germany, Australia, Romania, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Hungary, and stateless Jews who were located to Uganda during the Second World War and were camped at a place called Arapai Camp. That's the government land. Right now, it has been turned into an agricultural institution. But the biggest number of refugees we have had was after our independence. That is in the 60s, although the biggest lot from Rwanda were before our independence. We got them in 1959, up to 60. About 80,000 Tutsi refugees came to our country. We got about 33,000 refugees fleeing around the same time, 59, 60, from the DRC. That by then it was the present DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. So Uganda has always welcomed refugees. It's not only in the 60s. Right now, we have, as of June, when the conference, the Solidarity Summit took place, we had 1,271,000 refugees. But by today, as he said, it's beyond, because every day people are coming in. That was in June, 2 months ago, 1.2, almost coming to 1.3. So now it could be even approaching 1.5 million. The biggest number of refugees are from South Sudan, but we also have people who have come from the Congo, as I mentioned. We have from Sudan, the Upper Sudan, Khartoum. We have 36,000 refugees from Burundi, 35,000 refugees from Somalia, 14,000 from Rwanda, 12,000 from Eritrea, and about 3,000 from Ethiopia. So how does Uganda do it? Because that's the main question I wanted to share with you. Uganda's refugee management system, which most of you hail as one of the best globally, is anchored on 4 main pillars, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this presentation. National stability, that's number 1. Number 2, a hospitable host population. Number 3, a conducive policy environment. And 4, a humane legal system. When I was coming on to way here, I thought of something. I said, by the way, even in our national anthem, the second stanza when we were singing, our anthem has 3 stanzas. The second stanza says, "O Uganda, the land of freedom, our love and labor we give, and with neighbors all at our country's call, in peace and friendship we live." So you find it even in our anthem, we had to include something to do with our neighbors who are under stress. We are willing to live with them in peace, and we welcome them to our borders. That is in the national anthem. Now, national stability. Because most people talk about Uganda. When you say, "I'm from Uganda," they could tell you, "Oh, Idi Amin," because they knew during Idi Amin as a dictator, what he did that was the selling point. But since then, we have stabilized. We have had a stable government for the last 30 years. We have regular elections. Development is taking place. It may be slow, but we are trying. And so someone will feel comfortable to run to you and stay with you because he knows he's safe wherever you are. So there is national stability. Then the population of Uganda is very friendly, hospitable. Some of you have traveled to Uganda as tourists, can testify to this. They are always smiling. The people, Ugandans, will always greet you as if you think someone knows you. In fact, when some of us come to Europe, the first cultural shock we get is when people just pass you as if. My neighbor next door in the same flat will open and walk out as if he hasn't seen me. Then you wonder, but yet in Africa, we do greet. We even spend a lot of time, we waste a lot of time greeting. How are you? How are your crops? How is this? Did the rain help you? Such things. We ask so many questions to show that. So we are hospitable. Now, I said there are 4 pillars. Now, the third pillar is a conducive policy environment. And I know that's where most of you want to learn from. And then the 4th one will be the humane legal system. The government of Uganda has, for the first time in the history of our country, integrated refugee protection and management into the broader national development context by incorporating it into the National Development Plan 2015-16 to 2019-20. So in our National Development Plan, we have touched on refugees because refugees are an important part of the Ugandan National Development Plan. They are treated as an opportunity rather than a threat. Them being with us is not a threat. These are our neighbors. If I meander from my presentation, as I told you, in the 70s we had problems with Idi Amin. A number of us who were born by then also ran away from Idi Amin and went to these neighbors. These people kept us. They kept us well until we managed to organize ourselves to remove Idi Amin with the support of the same neighbors, because Tanzania gave us a lot of backing, weapons, and an army to be able to chase away Idi Amin. We took over power, but we had some setbacks. Of course, you know, when you have come from a struggle, you all have different ideas of what it means being in power. So there has been a lot of infighting, corruption, but with time, from 1986, we have stabilized. That's why I said we have, for the last 30 years, we have had a stable government. There may be some shortcomings, but still, these are things we can work on. But the people we went to when we were in our time of need, if they're running to you, there's no way you can close your door. If I was in Kenya and I was put in a camp where I'm told you stay here, there's barbed wire, you don't move, and it hurt me, when it's my turn, I said, no, let someone move, so long as you'll come back. If they find you and ask for your national ID, present it. I mean, for your ID as a refugee, present it, but be able to, you are free to move around. So in our policies, especially under the National Development Plan, that's why I've told you, we take refugees as part of as part of Uganda. They are not a threat. So the National Development Plan includes a refugee-specific strategy known as Settlement Transformative Agenda. This is an initiative led by the Office of the Prime Minister Refugee Department that aims to foster sustainable livelihood for refugees and host communities. Because when people arrive, just imagine there is war, people have run, and when there is war, when there is shooting and you are running, you don't have time to go to collect whatever, you just run. Because most of us just ran during, we left. If you ask me for my childhood photographs, I don't have them, because we left them in the house and ran. That house was later on ransacked by other people who took over. We have no records. You may find some of us don't have birth certificates. Later on, we get just photocopies. Some people don't have the academic documents. The originals were lost. So when someone is running, at that time is saving life. You're not thinking of what to carry. You just run and go. So you reach the place, they say, the government says, this is where you're going to settle. The host government, settle here. But first, they have to register you. Then give you some shelter, some food, and organize you. Take record of your arrival. So when these people come, if they're not handled well, it can be a problem, especially for the areas in which they're staying. Even if they're staying on government land, because most of the refugee camps, villages we have are on government land, but they are neighboring other communities. So the policies we have in place are to make sure that these people come, stay with their host communities, but the environment is good enough for them to live safely, to live with dignity, and live in harmony with the host communities. If they came and they crowded the health center and the host communities miss out on the medication and the medical treatment, they would complain. So it means you have to beef up the health area. If it is a school and the school-going kids are being put to school, then it means you have to expand the classrooms or find a way of accommodating them or teaching them within the camp. But these are things you have to plan for. You don't just let people come and mess up your community, and then in the end you may get an uprising. So the Settlement Transformation Project under the ministry, under the Office of the Prime Minister, Refugee Department, has 6 main objectives. One is land management, to ensure that settlement land is managed in a way that is efficient and sustainable. Sustainable livelihood, to foster sustainable livelihood for refugees and host communities and thereby contribute to socio-economic growth. Number 3 is governance and rule of law. That is to ensure that the settlements are governed in a way that respects the rights and obligations of refugees and promotes the rule of law among refugees and host communities. Number 4 is peaceful coexistence, is to create an enabling environment for refugees to live in safety, harmony, and dignity with host communities, and together contribute to social cohesion. Number 5, environmental protection, that is to protect and conserve natural environment in and around the refugee settlements. And lastly, 6, community infrastructure, to progressively enhance economic and social infrastructure in refugee hosting areas in accordance with government plans and systems. Now, the Settlement Transformative Agenda is a 5-year project. The first year was in preparing and planning. That was the preparatory and planning phase, which is going to be followed by 3 years of intensive implementation and closing with 1 year of consolidation and wrap-up and handover to the local community bodies. But this is something that is ongoing, although it is having setbacks of funding. So we fear that some of the good policies we have in place may not go on well if we don't get the funding. Then this settlement transformative agenda is complemented by the joint United Nations World Bank refugee and host population empowerment. This is a strategic framework that is also integrated in the United Nations Development Assistance Framework 2016-2020, and which supports our National Development Plan 2. The refugee and host population empowerment is the self-reliance and resilience strategic framework for refugees and host communities in the 9 refugee hosting districts. Through multi-sectoral partnership, the government, the UN agencies, and World Bank, supported by development partners, aim at enhancing coordination of transitional programming from emergency towards development for refugee hosting through socio-economic empowerment and reinforced integrated essential service delivery. This is a 5-year strategy which will enhance the resilience of refugees hosting districts, create space and enhance socio-economic integration of refugees, including bridging the gap between humanitarian and development intervention phases. So you see that the project under Office of the Prime Minister and this one jointly hosted by the UN and World Bank look similar, but the one of the UN World Bank is expected to deliver the following: sustainable livelihood based on modernized agricultural practices, improved market linkages, market-driven technical skills, and small-scale enterprise. Number 2, integrated and sustainable social service delivery with district local governments systems focused particularly on the health and education sectors. Number 3, community and system resilience based on dialogue and peaceful coexistence. Number 4, protection, including emergency response, preserve equal and unhindered access to territory and protection space, and promotion and promote the full enjoyment of rights while maintaining civilian character of asylum. And lastly, preparing refugees for solutions such as building knowledge, skills, capacities for refugees when they return to their home. Then we have what we call the self-resilience strategy. That came as a result of the need to respond to the protracted nature of refugee situations. If someone is going to stay in your country for a long time, you don't see the hope of that person going back within the coming few months. You have to find a way of making this person self-reliant, self-empowered, so that he won't continue waiting for handouts from the agencies and NGOs that are helping the refugees. So the people who have stayed longest, because like I told you, the Rwandese, the Hutu, came in 1959, 1960. And they recently went back in 1994 and captured power. So imagine from 59 up to 1994, it's a long time. The Sudanese, since the conflict began, have been there living with us, they are there. So if someone is staying for so long, we plan to make that person self-reliant. So they need to grow their own food. They need, instead of being a burden to the host countries, they need to show that we are also able to do some things on our own. If people have come from a French-speaking country and the kids cannot join our schools because we are English-speaking, then the person will have to, one will volunteer, maybe to those who know can teach in French. So we have a humane legal system, because I've talked of, that was the policies. Uganda ratified international and regional human rights instruments, and based on this, we have gone ahead we have our own laws in place. We have the 2006 Refugee Act and 2010 Refugee Regulations that provide legal regulatory framework enabling these refugees to the right to work and freedom of movement. So it allows the refugees to engage in gainful employment, to travel around the country, to look for markets and to make their own shopping. So now I come to challenges as a host country. Because hosting refugees does come with the challenges. Because as I told you, people appear at your doorstep, a group of them, they are crying, it's raining, it's cold, you have to find a way of, so the sudden numbers, you have to feed them, that's one. You have to shelter them. You have to provide energy for them for cooking and lighting. You have to provide water for household use and production. You need allowances for clothing and other household needs. You need education for knowledge and skills so that having lost their property as they ran, I gave my own example, you run and leave everything, they need to start on something. And then health, some come, then they can bring up diseases, so you have to immunize them, you have to treat them when they are sick, or those who got wounded as they escaped. So the way forward, as I conclude, is I want to emphasize that Uganda is committed to progressively making asylums or refugees live as humanely as possible. And Uganda will continue to champion the cause of refugees at every opportunity, regionally or internationally. And we shall also expect meaningful support from our friends in the global village. As I end, I want to leave you a quote from a Kenyan professor, Mbiti, who said, "I am because we are, and since we are, therefore I am." That's what we use when we are thinking of helping the refugees who come, that notion. If they hadn't helped me, maybe I won't be alive. But so I am because we are, and since we are, therefore I am. Thank you very much.